Atari 2600 clone console. Long before the gaming industry became a billion-dollar battlefield, Atari was already fighting a war that most of the world never even saw. The early 1980s were chaotic, unregulated, and ripe for companies looking to make easy money by copying whatever was popular. And nothing was more popular than the Atari 2600. That system was a cultural phenomenon, dominating living rooms across America and Europe. Predictably, dozens of manufacturers popped out of nowhere, offering cheap Atari 2600 alternatives that were barely disguised clones. Some changed the case, some changed the controller shape, and some didn't even bother doing that. Inside, they were all the same, unauthorized replicas of Atari's hardware and circuitry. The wave of lawsuits reached so far that even stores selling the knockoff consoles were targeted. Retailers pulled them from shelves to avoid being dragged into litigation. As a result, many clone console brands vanished almost overnight, leaving behind almost no documentation of their existence. These weren't consoles that failed because they were poorly made or unpopular. They failed because Atari obliterated them in court before they even had a chance to grow. In a strange twist of fate, the legal war Atari started indirectly contributed to the video game crash by flooding the market with unregulated clones, confusing consumers, and damaging the industry's overall reputation. Atari won the lawsuits, but the industry lost stability, and many consoles were sued into oblivion before the world ever fully knew they existed. ColecoVision Expansion Module Number 1. Coleco had created something extraordinary with the ColecoVision, a console more powerful than anything Atari had at the time. But Coleco's boldest move wasn't the console itself, it was Expansion Module Number 1. This add-on allowed ColecoVision to play Atari 2600 games, instantly giving it access to the largest library in the world. It was a Titan-level play, a strategy so aggressive that it triggered one of the most important lawsuits in gaming history. Although Coleco eventually won, the victory was hollow. The damage was already done. Retailers began distancing themselves from the add-on, fearing they'd get caught in Atari's legal net. Manufacturing slowed. Public interest waned as rumors spread about legality issues. Even though Coleco was legally in the right, the add-on's momentum died. It became a console peripheral, overshadowed by constant legal drama. And while ColecoVision itself continued for a while longer, Expansion Module Number 1 became known not for its success, but for being sued so aggressively that it never reached its true potential. It was a console accessory that could have changed the industry, but instead became another victim of Atari's legal onslaught. Tengen's unlicensed NES cartridges, Nintendo dominated the 1980s with an iron grip unlike anything that came before. Their NES lockout chip, the 10NES, was designed to prevent unlicensed games from running. Most companies accepted this, but Atari Games, through its subsidiary Tengen, decided to challenge Nintendo's authority head-on. They filed lawsuits claiming Nintendo's licensing system was anti-competitive and monopolistic. But behind the scenes, Tengen was secretly working to bypass the NES lockout chip. To do this, they needed the 10NES code, which was a closely guarded trade secret. Tengen claimed they reverse-engineered the chip, but Nintendo alleged something much more serious, that Tengen obtained the lockout code illegally through a misrepresented government document request. Nintendo sued immediately, and the war that followed was brutal. Tengen's unlicensed black cartridge NES games hit the market quickly, gaining attention for their distinctive look, but the lawsuits came even faster. The legacy of Tengen's unlicensed hardware is complicated. On one hand, they pushed back against Nintendo's Iron Rule, and many argue that they helped open the door to future competition. But on the other, their legal defeat remains one of the clearest examples of a console-related product being sued so thoroughly that the company behind it completely collapsed. Tengen didn't just lose, they were erased. The Neo Geo Pocket SNK released the Neo Geo Pocket as a direct competitor to Nintendo's Game Boy, and at first, it looked like it had a shot. The handheld was sleek, well-built, and offered arcade-quality titles based on SNK's legendary franchises. But behind the scenes, SNK was facing a storm of legal and financial trouble that few consumers ever heard about. The company was sued by several arcade partners and distributors over broken contracts and supply issues. These lawsuits drained SNK financially right as they were trying to push the Neo Geo Pocket into major markets. Worse yet, as the company struggled, they became tangled in international legal disputes related to their acquisition by Arus. Lawsuits emerged claiming that SNK's intellectual property had been mishandled or misrepresented during the transition. All of this legal chaos meant that SNK couldn't put proper resources into marketing or producing the Neo Geo Pocket. Developers grew hesitant to support it, fearing the company would collapse, which it eventually did. The Neo Geo Pocket didn't fail because it was bad. It failed because its parent company was sinking under legal pressure on all sides. SNK went bankrupt in 2001, and with that collapse, the Neo Geo Pocket was effectively sued out of existence before it ever had a real chance to compete. It's one of the only handhelds in history destroyed entirely by legal fallout rather than commercial performance. The Fairchild Channel F, before the Atari 2600 existed, there was the Fairchild Channel F, the first console with interchangeable cartridges, but after the video game crash, Fairchild struggled to recover. The system had a chance at revival when a company called Zircon purchased the rights and attempted to re-release it. However, Zircon faced immediate legal challenges over patents, trademark rights, and manufacturing agreements left over from Fairchild's earlier ownership changes. The console was stuck between multiple companies claiming partial ownership or financial stake. Lawsuits were filed, injunctions were threatened, and production stalled while courts tried to determine who actually controlled what. Zircon didn't have the money to fight everyone simultaneously. The console's revival died before it could hit shelves again. It became yet another case where legal pressure smothered a console before it even had the opportunity to re-enter the market. The Phantom Console. The Phantom was supposed to be a revolutionary cloud-based console years before cloud gaming became real. But from the beginning, it was surrounded by accusations of fraud, false promises, and investor deception. The company behind it, Infinium Labs, burned through investor money without ever producing a working unit. Lawsuits from former employees, investors, and partners started piling up. The SEC even got involved, investigating misleading financial disclosures. Infinium Labs spent more time in court than in development rooms. Every attempt to manufacture the console was halted by financial disputes or legal injunctions. By the end, the Phantom had become infamous as a console that existed more in legal documents than in reality. It wasn't just sued into oblivion, it was legally dismantled before anything physical ever truly existed. The Phantom stands as one of gaming's biggest cautionary tales, a console destroyed entirely by its own legal mismanagement. Commodore CDTV. The Commodore CDTV was meant to be an ambitious multimedia console years ahead of its time. But the company's mismanagement led to a series of contractual disputes with manufacturers, distributors, and software partners. Multiple companies sued Commodore over unpaid manufacturing fees and broken distribution promises. These lawsuits drained the company's finances at exactly the moment the CDTV needed full marketing support. Instead of focusing on improving the console or fixing its software library, Commodore poured money into legal battles that spanned multiple countries. By the time the CDTV could have gained traction, the company was too overwhelmed by financial and legal problems to keep supporting it. The console faded, forgotten, dragged down by a legal storm that suffocated its life cycle before it ever got a second wind. The Hyperscan Mattel attempted a console comeback with the Hyperscan, a hybrid card-scanning game system. But behind the scenes, the company was dealing with constant legal issues involving licensing contracts and disputes with developers. Several companies claim Mattel failed to meet development obligations. Others claim Mattel misrepresented the console's projected sales. The resulting lawsuits not only cost Mattel money, but also delayed game development and halted the production pipeline. Retailers, hearing rumors of legal trouble, reduced shelf space. Developers abandoned planned titles. The Hyperscan was dead before it had any chance to grow. Legal pressure tightened around the console until it collapsed entirely, becoming one of the shortest-lived systems in modern history. And those were the consoles that weren't just commercial failures. They were legally hunted, buried, or dismantled before the world ever had a chance to embrace them. If you want more hidden stories like these, make sure to like the video, subscribe to Video Game Guy, and hit the notification bell so you never miss another deep dive into gaming history.